Hey everybody, this is part of our full-length primetime podcast. You can check it out on Blog Talk Radio, iTunes, YouTube, plenty more. I hope you enjoy.
This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
What's up, everybody? Ricky Widmer here, along with not Brandon Swanson for this week, as Brandon is living it up in nice old sunny Florida, way down south, while I'm up here in Chicago. Brandon enjoying a little bit of a vacay this week, so I am solo as you are listening to the Primetime Podcast here on Most Valuable Podcast. If you're new to the show, welcome in. If you're joining us yet again, thank you for coming back for another week of college sports and college sports talk. And I got a jam-packed show for you today, but before I start, if you're on YouTube, you're noticing something. You can't see my wonderful face, and I can't see your wonderful face. This week, since Brandon's out, it's going to be an audio-only podcast for Blog Talk Radio and YouTube, so you're just noticing that difference. But I got a jam-packed show for you guys today. Going to be talking a little bit of college basketball and college football, the full gambit here. Number one we'll look at is Adam Silver was on the Herd today. In that interview, mentioned something where they're rethinking. He's okay with going back and saying, hey, let's get rid of the one and done rule. So I am going to look at that and say, how does that affect college basketball? Would college basketball be better without the one and done rule? Then we're going to go and dive into the NFL draft like we've been doing here on the Primetime Podcast for the past couple of weeks, going to the defensive side of the ball this time as Arden Key, the defensive player, the lineman for LSU, they're expecting him to be back this year. Could he be the best defensive prospect for the 2018 NFL draft? And then I am going to stick in the SEC for college football to end the show with some comments made from the Texas A&M AD about head coach Kevin Sumlin, and will this be the final year for Kevin Sumlin at the University of Texas A&M? But let's jump right into it. We're going to talk about college basketball to start the show, and if you want to hear the comments, it's in the middle of the interview. I'm going to include the link down below in the description for you guys. But basically, Adam Silver was on the Herd earlier today, and they mentioned things. The question really sparked from Colin asking him about the D-League, or what is now going to be called the G League, sponsored by Gatorade. And within that kind of question, Adam Silver mentioned, hey, you know what, we are actually, or he said, I am open to kind of rethinking the one and done rule. And it got me, my ears automatically perked, because if you guys are either avid listener of the Primetime Podcast or the Fast Break Podcast, you guys will know that I am not a fan of the one and done rule. I think that it's one of those things where, should college basketball be you're in it for 3 years? Not necessarily, because it's not the same thing as football. It's not. Football has the you stay 3 years, because if you came out 18 years old going up against an NFL pro, because of the physicality of that sport, because of how kind of high-tensed and physical and violent it is, you'd get destroyed. There's no question. Your body has to go through changes from 18 to, let's say, 3 years. You're about 21, 22 when you come out for the NFL draft. So there's a reason why the NFL has that in place, and that's one of the big reasons. They don't want to have more injuries than the ones that they're already researching, like concussions and all that. They don't want that for 18-year-olds coming out. But with basketball, you don't really have to deal with that. So the one and done rule, when it comes in my case, is why do we even need it? And when it comes to college basketball, there was an article way back when, early this March, by Andrew Lynch of Fox Sports, and I kind of was rereading it today, as his article was titled "How the One and Done Rule Had Ruined the NCAA Tournament," and I was rereading it today because it kind of made some points to me when it comes to the one and done rule and college basketball, because how I'm looking at it, and this is my belief now, is that If you are like a LeBron James, if you are like a Kevin Garnett, if you are like a Kobe Bryant, and you have the talent to come out of high school and play in the NBA, good, more power to you. Go ahead. If you do not, but you still want to make that choice, you have the option to make that choice. The thing that I kind of feel that the one and done rule, I know why the NBA is thinking of it strictly on the NBA. They don't want their product to be any lesser with kids coming in who aren't developed. But now that they're having the G League, they can kind of use that as kind of like a minor league system, kind of like baseball does. However, I don't think that would hurt college basketball, because you look at college basketball, and the thing that I remember most from my childhood and just early college basketball, because through my life, I am sitting here 27 years old today on March 31st. I have kind of seen a little bit of two ways for college basketball. When I first got into college basketball, it was like the late 90s, early 2000s, and the first real team I fell in love with were my Fighting Illini, especially the ones down with 2004-05. Actually, that 2004-05 team would have been the last college season before the one and done rule. I still talk about those games today. I still talk about the Illinois-Louisville game. I still talk about the Illinois and the Arizona games. I still talk about those games. And part of me wonders if, maybe the level of competition was a little bit better back then. And I know that now most of my life has now been past the one and done rule. So I've seen everything that the one and done rule has to offer, but I can't help but look at the one and done rule and kind of feel like, hey, you know what? I do look at the tournament a little bit differently than I used to as a kid. And the one thing is, I know that Lynch in his article called, the NCAA, that some of these games were unwatchable. I don't think it's that bad to where I'm a college basketball fan. Obviously, I'm talking to you on a college basketball podcast, or a college sports podcast, I should say, as we're going to touch football a little bit later. But the thing is, the games have definitely changed over the time this would have been the 11th season, I believe, since the one and done rule was enacted in 2005. And the things that I think with the one and done rule is that I think it should be gone. I think that Adam Silver, the reason he perked my ears today was because I think college basketball would be better without the one and done rule. And the main reason why is I feel like it'll give students, it'll give young athletes the choice. Just because you get rid of the one and done rule doesn't mean that every athlete is going to go to the NBA. Yeah, there will be some that jump to the NBA. Would Ben Simmons have said, hey, I feel trapped, or why am I at LSU when I don't want to be here? Would a Markelle Fultz have maybe gone straight to the NBA? Would Alonzo Ball, with LeVar Ball? Would LeVar Ball have even had Lonzo go to UCLA if he could have just went straight to the NBA last season? There are obviously going to be players that go that route, but college basketball will still find those players that need to go to college to develop their game, because that's a big thing that Adam Silver had mentioned and that's why I think they're kind of reworking the G League now to help with that kind of development, to where, you look at a guy in Brandon Ingram, we loved him in college. This past year, didn't really hear much from him. And I know he's on the Lakers, and the Lakers weren't that good of a team, but still, he wasn't making an immediate impact for his team. There are few and far between with rookies. Like the rookie of the years for this year in the NBA, the leading guy is Dario Saric, and that's a guy who is an international guy. He didn't even go to college. And back to the point with one and done and college basketball, I think if we allow more students, more athletes the choice to say whether I want to go to the pros, whether I want to play overseas, overseas is still an option, whether I want to go to the G League, whether I want to go to college, you're still going to get those players to those colleges? Because let's be honest, I know that the recruiting game has kind of changed a little bit, and I mean, Calipari has kind of embraced this one and done. And if you have either read Calipari's book or have watched any interviews with Calipari or have seen any documentaries with him, you know he's the type of guy where he's in it for the players. My goal is, you're here for 1 year. My goal is to get you drafted in the first round of the NBA draft, or to get you drafted in the NBA, get you to the NBA. That's the model that he's kind of embraced, and players have gone ahead and bought into that. That's why some of those one-and-doners a lot of them go to Kentucky, because, hey, this guy is going to do it. He's even the coach where he's there on draft night to say, hey, this is like your graduation day. Why would I miss my son's graduation? That's right out of the mouth of Coach Calipari in interviews and documentaries that he's been a part of. The thing I think with the one and done, and what I go back to, is it has to do solely with the NCAA tournament. Because let's be honest, there are few and far between of basketball fans, unless you are like a really big college basketball fan, which I am assuming you are because you're listening to this podcast. A lot of the people kind of check into basketball season. Non-conference is kind of like, okay, there's basketball on, but there's football on. Football's still there, guys. Football is the main treat. Once football season ends and we start that conference season, that's when the majority of people switch over, like, okay, it's basketball season, and that just ramps up all the way to conference tournament time, and then the NCAA tournament is kind of the apex or the mecca of all the excitement for college basketball, even when all of the casuals come in to watch tourney games. And I feel like if the NBA got rid of the one-and-done rule, it would make not only college basketball better, but the reason why it would make the tournament a whole of a lot better. And the reason why I say that is you look at, it's not going to change anything. Like if we get rid of the one and done, it will not change who goes to the Final Four in my mind. Will not change who goes to the Final Four. Will not change what type of team will win the national championship or go to that championship game. Because if you go all the way back to 2005, and I want you to do this, look through every single roster of the championship team and the runner-up team. The one thing you will notice is that the championship team and the runner-up team usually have a more upper class kind of a roster to them. I mean, you look at right now the North Carolina team that just won this year. I mean, Kennedy Meeks, Joel Berry, Justin Jackson, these were all upperclassmen guys. You look at the Gonzaga team that was also going up against them, that was also a more upper, like the only freshman on that team that was a star who's going to be in the first round of the NBA draft, a lottery pick, is Zach Collins. That is one player on that entire roster, which is a one and done. The rest of those guys, upperclassmen. And I mean, you can go back even further. I could keep going back if I want to. Like Villanova, North Carolina, most of the North Carolina guys were similar. I mean, Marcus Page was one of the big ones that was there. The big difference from guys who left, he was an upperclassman. Villanova had a lot of upperclassmen guys. The only teams that make the kind of exception are the 2015 Duke team. They had a lot of freshmen from that team, and I know Grayson Allen was one of them, but he was not a one-and-doner. Usually the Kentucky teams, I know the Kentucky team that won the national championship, I want to say Michigan in the 2012-2013 season was a heavily freshman team. But besides that, there weren't a ton of them. Maybe one of the Butler teams. So from 2006 all the way until now, about 3, maybe 4 if we give it to them, 3 teams were led by one-and-doners. The rest of them had that upperclassman presence. And the thing that I'm looking at is I know that some of them you're going to say, well, Ricky, some of these guys had underclassmen and sophomores. Sophomores aren't going to count in this argument because we are talking one-and-doners. So that means freshmen. They were led by freshmen. And I look at the games for, as we got later into the tournament, those games this year were exciting. And I think what will happen is if we get rid of the one and done, and now this is my theory, this isn't necessarily what is immediately going to happen. I mean, look at the one and done rule. We changed it in 2005, almost at 2015. We changed it in 2005, raised the age up to 19. Look at how long it took it to affect where we are now. We're 11 years down the line. Now we're starting to go, whoa, this is how things have kind of changed. And what I think is if we change the one and done, just get rid of it entirely, not even change it, get rid of it entirely, it will make the earlier games, the first and second round games, maybe even the Sweet 16 games, more exciting to watch because these will be players where it will be guys that you will have known for a couple of years. Of course, we're still going to get one and doners because if they just get rid of it, there's going to be guys that want to come out after high school. There are going to be ones that come out after freshman year, sophomore year, but we're just not going to make a big deal about it. And we're still going to have the kind of guy, the teams are still, to me, recruiting is still going to stay the same. The big difference is you're not going to have that guy who feels handicapped to go to a team. The Ben Simmonses, I'll throw out Markelle Fultz because I know Sean has said many times he's the only thing that Washington team had. The Lonzo Balls for UCLA, the Brandon Ingrams at Duke, the Jahlil Okafor at Duke. I'm naming just a bunch of one-and-doners at this point, but you get the point. What the one-and-done rule will do if it is abolished from the NBA is that I think it will make college basketball a little bit more, competitive in the tournament. We won't just get Final Four and Elite Eight games and national championship games. Like, look at the last two national championship games. Look at those last two games. Those were exciting games. I think that is going to bridge over. Now, of course, with the NCAA tournament that you're going to have to think about is we are going to have teams that are mid-majors and below who, okay, there's a blowout from a Power 5 to those, but we might get a few of those that even come up and upset, and we might get back to, maybe it's because I was a child, maybe I have nostalgia glasses on, and this is where I'm kind of going to turn it on to you guys, but I think of my kind of early teens, because I would have been about 14, 15. I just think back to that Illinois season. Maybe I have the nostalgia goggles on, but I just think to that season and I go, man, those games were exciting. And that Illinois team, I use them as the example because A, I was a fan, and B, they didn't have any standout freshmen. They didn't have any. I mean, D. Brown Jr., you had, I want to say Luther Head and Powell were seniors, and then Augustine was a junior, and Darren Williams was a junior. Darren Williams was the third overall pick in that draft. So, I mean, what I think getting rid of the one and done will make college basketball better because it will make it'll make the tournament more compelling and more watchable in the beginning, like first, second round, and then Sweet 16 games. Everyone won't say, well, wake me up for the Final Four when it comes to exciting games. I'm not talking about basketball in general, just exciting games down to the wire. And also, I think it's going to build a little bit of chemistry where we get to know guys. We get to fall in love with guys for more than one season, where it's not just going to be, hey, Lonzo Ball, we talked about him last year. This upcoming year on the Primetime Podcast, Brandon and I ain't going to talk about him because he's no longer in college basketball. We will get more of the Miles Bridges, as I would say, the guys that kind of stay because they love the university and want to stay before they go pro. Because another thing, and this is me kind of just going over to that NBA side a little bit before I wrap it up, is Adam Silver even said, you look at the draft rankings at the beginning of the season and then at the draft, not much changes, very few changes for over a season from where they are ranked to where they are end when they ranked. But this is where I want to kind of turn the conversation on to you guys is let me know what you think of the NBA getting rid of the one and done rule, but also let me know what you think it would affect college basketball. How would it affect college basketball? And 2, do you think it'd be good or bad for college basketball if we got rid of the one and done rule? Let me know down below in the comment section.
Hey everybody, thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed a lot of emotion. If you want more, click this video right over my left shoulder. You will certainly not regret it.